Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Brandon Thomas. I'm a real estate investor out of Southern California, and I'm here to talk to you about wholesaling. But before we get into all of that, I want you to go ahead and like, comment, and share this video to anybody that you think is going to be an aspiring wholesaler or any real estate investors in general, just so we could get that algorithm up so we could reach out to those aspiring real estate investors. What I'm aiming to do is inspire and educate those who are aspiring to get into the real estate industry. So, for the first topic of discussion, what we're going to be talking about is wholesaling. So what is wholesaling? Wholesaling is a process of taking a property under contract and turning around and giving it to an end buyer. That end buyer could be a fixer and flipper, as it's commonly known as, or a buy and hold investor, or even a homestead buyer. Homestead buyer meaning someone who's going to live in the property as their primary residence. So, what is the process of wholesaling? Well, the first rule of wholesaling is you have to talk to people. And I get it. It's uncomfortable, but you have to push through that. It's one of those things where you're going to be in your comfort zone. You don't want to talk to strangers. It is really weird asking a complete stranger, hey, can I buy your home? And it's just an awkward conversation. It's an awkward interaction for sure. But you have to push through that. Once you push past your comfort zone, then you'll be able to grow and actually magnify this business. So who are you reaching out to? You're reaching out to sellers who are motivated. These people have problems that you need to solve. You have to think of yourself as a problem solver. So what is the problem of most of these sellers? Most of these sellers have motivation to sell because they're dealing with something that a normal typical agent can't, or maybe they don't have access to the resources in order to sell properly. And that's where you come in order to solve their problem. So what are these types of problems? Well, the most common one is fixers. These are the properties that need fixing, rehab, in order to bring the property value up to its comparable houses along that block. Once you get those under contract, you'll go ahead and take those to an end buyer, aka a flipper in this case. These are the properties where you could normally get those at a discounted price because, one, they're not turnkey, because nobody's going to live into something that has foundational issues or possibly a roof issue. These are the properties where they probably had a bad tenant in there, where now the cabinets need to be replaced, or the countertops need to be replaced, or whatever it is. It's going to require a lot of work. Most of these properties don't fit under the umbrella of conventional financing. And what does that mean? It means you can't really go to a bank and have them finance the house because it is too far gone for them to finance. It's too much of a risk. It's too much of a liability for them. So what's going to happen is they're going to reject that, which means really the only way that you could get these properties is if you get them for cash. And that's where the flippers come in. They have the hard money, they have the private money, they have the cash in order to close for them to take over that property, rehab them, use the construction costs in order to bring those properties' values up. So, you're looking for properties that need fixing. Perhaps maybe you're looking for a seller that has low equity in the property. Now this is going to actually require a different strategy outside of cash, because let's say, for example, back in 2022, when house prices were actually appreciating rapidly, a lot of people wanted to get into the Airbnb market. They wanted to get into the short-term rentals. So they bought these properties at a premium, looking to add a lot of value so that they could actually cash flow tremendously because of the beauty created from these houses. Now they're cash flowing significantly because the amount that they're bringing in from their Airbnb business is substantially higher than the mortgage value. So they're cash flowing a lot. However, at the end of 2022, short-term rental market has actually gone down a little bit in some areas. Therefore, a lot of people are now underwater because now they have low equity. They aren't cash flowing as much, if at all, and now they're looking to get out of it. For example, I had one seller. He's actually bought at the height of the market, tried to turn it into a short-term rental. He actually moved out to a different state because of his job. And now his Airbnb business is starting to fail. And now he's paying his mortgage as a primary residence over in another state. And he's also paying the mortgage in California, which is where this concerned property is. Now he's looking to sell this property. Do you think if he was to sell it on the market now that he would make money? The answer is no. Why is that? So consider you bought a property in 2022. In 2023, it only appreciated about $10,000. Do you think he's actually going to make $10,000 off of that sell? The real answer is no. Because once you put it on the market, well, the seller typically pays for closing costs. They're going to pay for agent commissions, and they're going to pay for appraisal fees and miscellaneous other expenses, which means that now that $10,000 spread that he had is now gone, going to everybody else, and now he's either breaking even at best or coming up out of pocket to sell that house. Who's going to pay 20% down to buy a property and then at the close of escrow pay additional money just to get rid of it? Not many people. Ergo, there's another problem to solve. Now, like I said before, this is not a cash solution. This requires a creative solution, but this is a solution that you could actually provide that seller. There's many ways to solve a problem. Am I by any means saying to take advantage of people during this process? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You have to consider yourself as a problem solver. And if that means by solving a problem, you lose a deal, so be it. You're there to help others. This is a community effort, right? You're here to actually make sure that somebody is getting the solution that they need in order to solve their problem. For example, let's say somebody's trying to sell their house and they have low equity. Well, you're going to mention to them, did you actually try to solve it on the open market? They're going to say no because they don't want to lose out, or they don't want to risk paying additional money to come up out of that property. Okay, great. Well, what other strategies have you done so far? They're going to list off what other strategies that they've tried to do. If none of them have worked and you provide the only solution that solves their problem, well, guess what? Now you're helping them, and at the same time, you're profiting in the experience. This is creating a win-win situation for all parties involved. That's what you have to think about when you're wholesaling. So you may be asking yourself, okay, Brandon, that's all well and good. I understand that I need to solve problems in order to make a lot of profit during this business. But how do I even get to these people? How do I even know what's a good lead? How do I even know where to even find these people that have problems? Well, that goes into another category of lead generations. And with wholesaling, actually with all businesses in general, lead generation is the crux of all businesses. Without leads, you have no business. And I want you to keep that in mind. Write that down. With no leads, you have no business. So how are you going to get these leads? Well, there's a lot of different options. Some have no cost involved, some have a little bit of cost involved, and others have a tremendous amount of cost involved. They're all going to have varying results at varying outcomes. I'm sure, as well as you do, that you're coming here for the free version, where there's a couple free versions that I'm going to talk to you about. The first one is joining a team, and that's actually my most recommended way of getting into wholesaling for free with no money out of your pocket. So how do you find a team? Well, you could go on Facebook, you could go to real estate meetups, put your name out there, right? You have to talk to people. This is a talking to people business. Don't be scared to shy away from any of that. You're going to join a team that's going to be looking for people who's committed to finding leads, whether that be cold calling or cold texting or whatever it may be. These teams are probably going to have different solutions that I may not have during this video. So go ahead and talk to people. What are they looking for? What value can you add to their team so that they can implement you? But the three things that you need to consider is that you need to have hustle, ambition, and reliability in order to make that happen. Well, what's another way of getting into wholesaling for free? Well, another way is actually calling agents. This strategy, however, is completely different than talking to sellers directly. Now, you have sellers on one side and agents on the other, and they're going to require two different types of conversations. When you're talking to a seller, you want to be educational, you want to sympathize with them, and you also want to listen to them. You want to have active listening skills when you're talking to a seller, because you want to make sure that you're solving their problem accurately, right? When you're talking to an agent, however, it's going to be a lot more transactional experience. It's going to be a lot more business, a lot more professional. They're going to ask you a lot more questions, trying to get into your credibility, trying to get into your credentials, trying to get into how you're going to actually benefit them. Agent, in the long run, is going to be looking for that money. How are they going to get paid? And how are you going to be a credible enough source to get them their money? Now, the best agents are also going to be looking out for their seller as well, because they have that role to take care of the seller. They're going to be looking out for their best interest, as in, am I going to close? Yes. Okay, is this going to be the best outcome for the seller once we do close? So you need to navigate that as well. There's going to be a balance, and you need to talk to them in completely different ways. Agents are a little bit more streamlined, whereas you could pretty much talk to agents the same. Obviously, you're going to have different personalities that you're going to have to navigate through, but sellers, you're going to have a lot larger ranges of personalities that you're going to have to navigate through, and you're going to have to improv on the fly in order to cater to these people. You're not going to talk aggressively to somebody who's very timid, and vice versa. You're not going to be very timid against somebody who's going to be very aggressive. So here's some strategies that's going to take a little bit of money out of your pocket. It's not going to be too much, but the growth is still there. So the first means of doing so would be driving for dollars. And what do I mean by this? This is literally going to your car, driving around your neighborhood, and finding properties that need work. Once you find these properties, you go ahead and write down these property addresses, and you go ahead and take those over to a skip tracing software. They're going to compile the addresses that you put into that software and attach numbers associated with those respective properties so that you can go ahead and call them however you need to. Another common method of wholesaling is simply finding pre-foreclosures. These are the ones that have a red flag that say, hey, I'm in trouble, I have a problem, I need somebody to solve this. So, how do you find those? Easy. Go on Zillow, go on Realtor.com, go on Redfin, find properties that are in pre-foreclosure. Now, people go into pre-foreclosures various different ways, but the outcome is all the same. Payments are not being made, and the lender is saying, I need my property back. And you have a certain amount of time to do so before I actually do take it back. Now, this is the line that you're going to toe, because this gets into unethical wholesaling and ethical wholesaling. And like I said before, you need to be the problem solver. If you have someone that is in pre-foreclosure, the first thing that you need to do is figure out how you could solve their problem. First, ask them, are you trying to sell your house? Are you trying to keep your house? Most of the time, they're trying to keep their house. So it is up to you to figure out any means possible to help them keep their house. Maybe you need to advise to the seller, go back to the lender, maybe find a way to take care of any of their back payments that are due, or figure out any means necessary in order to keep their house in their name. Now, if they've exhausted all options, now go ahead and ask them, is it worth it to you to take a 7-year credit hit for you to try and keep this property and then end up losing it in the process? Or is it much better for you to actually go ahead and sell this property, start over with a fresh start, with cash in your pocket and your credit saved? Now, this is assuming that you've exhausted all options at this point. And again, I'm going to reiterate, you have to solve the problem first. Make sure that that seller is taken care of before you move on to any other option. Now, another form that you could do is generate a list yourself. You can go on Propstream. That's the one that I actually use. And within that software, you could actually pull various different categories. For example, you could pull houses with low equity. You could have houses with high equity. You could have the pre-foreclosures there. There's various different ways to find lists that you could go ahead and call. Now, quickly, I'll talk about some of these expensive options. So for example, if you don't want to go ahead and knock on doors or drive for dollars, you could go ahead and pay for Google ad space. Now, what this will do is actually put your business out in front of people via Google or Bing or whatever it is. Now, it's going to cost money every single time that you put an ad out there. And these are called paid per clicks. Every time somebody clicks on your ad, there's a payment that you have to pay. And generally speaking, that could range based on the keywords that you're using, and that could range from like maybe 10 cents, but it could also range up to $1. So imagine 1,000 people clicking on your ad out of curiosity. and you're paying 10 cents every single time. That's a lot of money, and that could add up very, very fast, especially if they're just kicking tires or just interested and you're not going to get anything from it. Some other obscure ways of doing it is getting TV ads or get on the radio, but those are some expensive options that you may or may not want to take advantage of. Now, once you actually get the list that you want, now it's time to skip trace. I mentioned this before. This is where you're actually putting the addresses that you have on your list and putting them into a software where it's going to generate a certain amount of phone numbers that are going to be tied to that property. Now, sometimes they generate an excessive amount, like 8 phone numbers, 9 phone numbers. You don't have to worry about the latter half of it. Your primary focus is to worry about the first 2, maybe the 3rd number, if you're really motivated to find that person. The other ones I would consider them trash. Focus on the first 2 phone numbers that are going to be associated with that property. Once you actually have the phone numbers that are associated with this property, now you have a decision to make. Are you going to dial these phone numbers yourself, or are you going to text these phone numbers? Because there's going to require different software platforms in order for you to do so. Now, the free way of doing so is getting your phone and hand dialing each and every number. This is a slow process. Now, vice versa, if you want to get through a faster process, you can use a dialer. And what I personally use is batch dialer. Batch dialer has an option of doing one or single line calls where it's calling on your behalf, and it'll actually skip the numbers that don't pick up or that are abandoned numbers. Or you can do a triple line dialer, which calls 3 numbers at once. And that process could go all the way up to 10 numbers. I don't recommend going to 10 numbers because as these calls are calling at the same time, I'm pretty sure you're questioning, well, what if 2 people pick up at the same time? Well, even though they may be microseconds apart, it's going to pick up the call that answers first and then drop the other ones. So with 10 numbers in that queue, your chances of hanging up on people are very high. I typically stick to 3 lines. Now, this service usually costs anywhere from like $100 to $160, depending on how many people that you want on that line, or even more if you want to add more and more phone numbers to it. If you want to go through the texting route, I personally use REI Reply. And with this can also help your automations as well, as you can set a specific text template and shoot them out to all your seller leads in order to ensure that you're talking to people who want to respond to you at their own timeline. Both strategies work. You could do both at the same time, or you could choose individual ones based on your preference on if you want to call somebody or if you want to text somebody. But either way, you're going to be talking to people. So once you start talking to people, guess what? You're going to hear a lot of no's. Like a lot of no's. Like a lot of no's. Understand that. Like, don't come into this thinking that you're going to close on your first deal, because it's not going to be like that. Wholesaling is simple, but it is not easy. You're going to have to get through thousands of people just to get 1 or 2 or 3 people that you're probably going to close on. So you have to be patient with this. If they say no to you, don't take it personal. Imagine this. You're hearing this video, and I'm telling you there's free ways to get into this. And now you have a lot of people doing the exact same thing, trying to get into this business for free. And now they're doing the exact same thing you're doing. A lot of sellers are getting a lot of calls. Tens of calls a week, hundreds of calls a week. So you're not the only one. You need to find a way to stand out. And the best way of standing out is to be that problem solver. So once you actually finally get that person that says yes, they're interested in an offer, go ahead and run your pitch. Is it going to be a cash pitch that's going to help their situation? Or is it going to be a creative pitch that's going to help their situation? You have to actively listen and figure out what's best for them. And then submit them an offer that you think works best for them. And if they decline it, or if they say, hey, let's renegotiate, go ahead and do that, okay? When you have a dilapidated property, the best option usually is a cash option, but there are other ways that you can do it. Sometimes you can do a partnership with that seller and then rehab the property and then sell the property on the back end, split the profits with the seller and the team that you're working with. And that would be a creative option in order to take down that property that's outside of cash. Now, if you're doing a creative option that's gonna solve a problem, for example, with low equity, Well, now you need to understand, how are you going to come up to the terms necessary that's going to solve the seller's problem, as well as giving you an assignment fee, and then giving the buyer exactly what they're looking for. Because you have to think about it, for a cash option, what you're doing is you're getting the seller's property for a certain price. You're going to add your fee on top of that, and then you're going to go ahead and find the end buyer. In this case, for a dilapidated property, it's going to be usually a flipper, and you're going to add that assignment fee to the seller's price, and you're going to sell it to the buyer for that price. That's where your assignment fee comes in. You need to figure out how you're going to get your assignment fee from a creative option. It could be coming from a down payment. Sometimes if the deal doesn't work and the margins are tight, maybe you could do a seller finance, which means you're giving part of your equity, your assignment fee, in equal chunks over time. So you're not getting everything in one lump sum, you're getting it in equal installments. That's the solution, but you need to figure out how you're going to actually get paid in that process. Again, you're a problem solver. Most of the time, when you actually find somebody that's going to be open to whatever offers that you have, you're going to have to follow up. And you're going to have to follow up a lot, because these deals typically don't close in 1 or 2 days. Sometimes they take weeks, months. I've been at a deal that's pending for about a year now. It's going to take a lot of time, constantly following up, staying top of mind, building that relationship in order to make sure that that deal actually follows through towards the end. So after all that follow-up, and you get the yes, and the seller's willing to move forward, now you can finally move on to the dispo side of wholesaling. So what does that mean? This is your time to actually find the buyer who's going to be interested enough to actually buy the property that you just took under contract. And what is that contract? That contract is a purchase contract. It's going to be a A to B, B to C sell. So A to B being between A is the seller, B is you. Now you're going to take an assignment to the purchase contract where it's a B to C, B being you, C being the buyer. So it's A to B, the purchase contract, and B to C, the assignment to the purchase contract. That assignment is going to include your assignment fee, as the name entails, and then you're going to add that to the buyer's purchase price, so that at the close of escrow, you're getting your fee as well. Once both parties have signed the agreement and both parties are completely knowledgeable about what's going on and what's taking place, now it's your job to either find a transaction coordinator, or you could go ahead and find an escrow officer in order to go ahead and take this property into escrow. And from there, it's going to take, depending on the type of contract, cash being, it could be anywhere between 10 to 14 days, or creative where it could be 30, sometimes 60 days, depending on the terms that you've set. So once it goes into contract, don't fall out. It's not done yet. It's not done until close of escrow, until money is in your bank account. Continue following up with the process, continue reaching out to the sellers. How are they doing? Give them opportunities for them to ask you questions. Reach out to the buyers. How are they doing? How's the funding coming along? Because most buyers, even though they use cash, they typically come in with a hard money or private money lender that sometimes falls out. So you need to be on top of things, ready to step in whenever you need to. And that's it. That's the entire process of wholesaling. But you need to understand, wholesaling may require a license in some states. I'm here in Southern California. It does not require a license. That does not mean that wherever you are, wholesaling does not require a license. So go ahead, check with the state laws, and make sure that wholesaling does not require a license. And if it does, go ahead and get the license. Wholesaling has a low barrier to entry. Like I just said, there's free options. There's very little money options that you can get into this, which means it could be quite competitive. But at the same time, there's a lot of money to be had if you are solving the problem, right? It's a low barrier to entry, but that only barrier is action. You have to take constant, consistent action in order to be successful in this business. So, with all that said, it sounds like wholesaling is simple, right? Very simple, but it is not easy. It takes lead generations. It takes calling, getting out of your comfort zone. It takes dispo. It takes follow-up. You have to do all of that consistently for months before you even get your first paycheck. And it's going to be daunting. It's going to be unmotivating. So you need to find somebody who's going to help you out. You need to dig deep to help yourself out, because sometimes people aren't going to be able to help you out. It's going to be only up to you to figure it out. So I hope this video helps. Please like, comment, and share this video if you think you got some value out of it.